Hello and welcome to the Three Championship Drive podcast, hosted by me, Lance Caporossi. I am trying to be quiet in my house because we have an early morning. My wife will be having a small but necessary procedure done, in and out, so it's no big deal. My son is finally feeling better. My mother-in-law is over because we still can't take our son to daycare. But anyways, we have to be at the hospital like 6 in the morning anyway, 2 hours before his daycare even opens. But we finally have it all figured out. Mother-in-law came through in the clutch, and it's going to be a fun day tomorrow. I'm glad this is all getting worked out. I'm glad she's doing this. I'm glad it's getting done. So now we'll have more answers to other questions that we have. But, if you want to have good thoughts about the Caporossi family tomorrow morning, or right now, if you're listening to it, I would greatly appreciate it. I know everything's going to go smoothly, but you never know. But no, it will go, just because it is a very simple procedure. I'm not really worried about it at all. It's just, it's just when things happen, you're like, man, damn. Wish they didn't, but we're going to get through it. Let's get into talking about the Pistons. Mark Stein says league sources tell him Jalen Duren's weighing the unappealing prospect of playing out the 2026-2027 season on the qualifying offer. We have already talked about this. We have heard this for days, that he is on the cusp of signing the qualifying offer and playing this upcoming season on a $9.6 million guaranteed deal. That's fine. That's fine. I personally, if I was in his ear, I would just tell him, dude, sign the long-term contract. You're missing out on a lot of money. I don't know what the contract would have to be after this season in order for him to make up the $25 million, but it would have to be a lot. And I do think there's going to be a little bit of regression this season. There's just too many mouths to feed in Detroit for him to have a 20-10 season. I think we're going to have a bounce-back year from John Collins. I think Isaiah Joe is going to show the NBA he's more than just a spot-up shooter. I think he's going to have a career year. I think Ibuka is going to be better. I just think there's more mouths to feed in Detroit. And Jalen Duren, I think there's going to be a little bit of a regression. Let's just talk about his agent real quick, because I see people throwing around the Tari Eason contract. So last offseason, Tari Eason had a 4-year, $100 million contract on the table. 65 of it was guaranteed. Now, we don't really know what the incentives were. I tried looking this up earlier today before I recorded, and it was mainly what people speculated was that it's had more to do with health and just appearing in games and teams winning and everything. Anyway, his agent, Chaffee Fields, basically said, hey, let's play out the next year, which they did. He didn't have a great season, though, but he got a 5-year, $81 million contract. Now, that is fully guaranteed. So I see people throwing around the agent and say, man, look, this dude's Tari Eason and Jalen Duren's agent. He's an idiot. I do think going into these negotiations, he has been a little boneheaded with Jalen Duren, especially he's not it feels like he's putting too much emphasis on the regular season. And it's like, dude, that's fine. That's great. But he shit the bed in the playoffs. And that's where the negotiations have to start. You have to account for the playoffs. So anyways, back to Tari Eason's deal. He signs a 5-year, $81 million contract this offseason. It includes a 10% trade kicker and a player option in year 5, which Tari Eason will be 31 if he decides to decline it, but only time will tell. But the point is, $81 million of it was guaranteed, which is more than what he was going to get the previous year. So you kind of have to pat his agent on the back just a little bit, where you're like, dude, you did get him more guaranteed money. Now, if he had hit all the incentives on the next contract, he'd be making more money, but it was incentives, and Tari Eason does have health issues. You would have to imagine those incentives in that contract were for his health and staying on the floor, but we'll never know. I guess my point is, I think the agent Chaffee Fields has made, sounds like a character from Boardwalk Empire too as well, but Chaffee Fields, I feel like we can call him a bonehead for the whole mess with Jalen Duren. But you got to give him his props for Tari Eason, though. I mean, 81 guaranteed over 5 years with the player option, 10% trade kicker. It's a good contract for Tari Eason, especially when he had a subpar season last year. I will say, Chaffee Fields, I don't think he 100% knows what he's doing just based on the Jalen Duren thing. But he did get Tari Eason more money. I do think, though, with revisionist history, it's not a good move for Jalen Duren to accept the qualifying offer and go into the season playing with it. We've seen it too many times with players that have elected to go that route because for whatever reason, maybe it's the agent in the ear, maybe it's the friends in their ear, maybe it's just the circle around them. Who's ever in their ear, though, we have seen over time that it has been bad advice. And really, it has kicked a few people in the ass. We'll just say it. Like, you go play with the qualifying offer, you have a bad year, teams get a little bit more tape on you. Look at Cam Thomas. I don't even know if he'll be in the NBA. But it has happened repeatedly. For Jalen Duren's sake, please just sign the contract. Don't play in the qualifying. I think you're really going to regret that decision this upcoming season. In other news, Bradley Beal is the name that Detroit Pistons apparently should be thinking about. According to NBA Trade Report, now they are a huge account. Don't get me wrong. They have over 80,000 followers. I believe most of what they tweet, I believe 99% of it is bullshit. I don't believe this dude has sources or whoever runs this account. I just believe you're throwing darts in the dark and hoping one of them sticks. But this person tweets out, Detroit Pistons have shown interest in Bradley Beal. Now let me just say, if this was like 7 years ago, this would be a hell of news because it was Bradley Beal. And Bradley Beal a few years ago was pretty good. I'll take Bradley Beal on a minimum deal just to prove it. Like, show me what else you have left. Show me if you have anything left in the tank. That's what I would say. His final year in Phoenix, he played 53 games, started 38 of them, averaged 17, 3, and 4 with 1 steal, shot 50% from the field, 39% from 3 on 5 attempts, got to the line 3 times and shot 80%. Now, this past season with the Clippers, played 6 games, started 6 games, averaged 8 points a game in 20 minutes. Like, he was a shell of his former self. I believe Bradley Beal, despite missing so much time, is closer to the Phoenix version than he is actually to the Clippers version. I don't know what's going on with him. I don't know how or why he can't stay healthy. It just seems like this career was one of those. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Eddie Jones, who doesn't get the credit in his career. I feel like Bradley Beal was going down that route where, like, you don't really remember him, but, like, on a random Tuesday, you're looking up old players and you come across Bradley Beal and you look at his basketball reference page and you're like, man, I forgot how good this guy was. That's, like, the territory he was going in. And now it feels like he's slipping into territory of, like, this dude's just a bust. This dude's a bum. He's never been healthy. When's the last time he's been healthy? And it has been quite some time. But, like, back to what I'm saying. If he wants to come on a minimum deal, I would embrace him with open arms. I would give him a big hug. I'd meet him at the airport in Detroit. I wouldn't have him sign anything because, like, I don't want to come off as that guy. I would just be real cool. But, like, anything more than that, I'm good. I do think there's still a serviceable NBA player. I don't think there's an all-star. I don't think there's an all-NBA team player. But I do think this is a guy that is not playing on his last legs. I just think he's hit a streak of bad luck the last few years. And he was in such a bad place in Washington that he's still just trying to get the taste out of his mouth and just, figure it out and just grow from there. But Bradley Beal, on a minimum, I would be okay with it. I think this is the last 6 games that he played for the Clippers. I just think he probably rushed back from an injury or he just wasn't feeling it. I don't know. But I would give Bradley Beal a shot on a minimum deal. That would be okay with me. Anything more than that, you're probably going to an insane asylum at some point. But yeah, Bradley Beal on a minimum, I'd be okay with that. I think that would be fine. Like I said, I think that would be all right. So Josh Eberly, I forget what articles. I mean, I forget what websites he writes for. I think it's like Hoop Mag is one of them. But either way, he shared the results, and he got 305,000 votes from his Twitter community for the 2026 NBA Top 25 Under 25. Now, my first complaint with this list is, I don't know. I feel like you should leave rookies off. I feel like when you look at a Caleb Wilson, Cam Boozer, and AJ DeBansta, Darren Peterson, you're probably like, yeah, dude, they haven't played a minute. I'm looking at the college tapes. Summer League just got played. These guys are great. I just feel like they should be left off the list because, I don't know, as of right now, I'm probably not taking any of those four over some of the names that are on here. And I understand that might sound crazy, but I haven't seen them play in the NBA. It would be crazy for me to look at this list and say, you know what? I'm going to take Darren Peterson over Jalen Johnson. I understand that the potential for Darren Peterson is through the roof, but Jalen Johnson is the complete package and just getting better each and every year. I don't know what Darren Peterson can do in the NBA. So that's why I feel like leaving rookies off until they play some meaningful NBA minutes would be wise. But anyways, there are two Pistons on this list. Jalen Duren at number 17. He didn't move at all. This is where he was when they started putting this together. Then Ausar, he went up a spot from 17 to 16. Those are the two Pistons right there. Well, these are from the results from the 2025 year. Jalen Duren did not make the list last year, but he made it this year. I have no problem with where they're at outside of the rookies that they put on the list. But as I'm looking at it, like, I have no complaints. And, like, that's really rare from me because I feel like I can look at any list like this and just nitpick it. But overall, like, I feel like the players that are ahead of Ausar and Jalen Duren should really be ahead of him. Like, I mean, I can see you making the case for Ausar being higher on the list because he is good. He is so good defensively. But, like, he only plays one side of the ball. Everybody else on this list, I mean, they're not great defenders, but a lot of them do play both sides. So it would be hard for me to make an argument for why Ausar should be higher. I can't make an argument for Jalen Duren. I'm perfectly fine with him being at 17. Now, if you remove those four rookies, he would bump up a little bit. But if the list as it currently stands, I'm fine with him being at 17. I'm fine with Ausar being at 16. Just because, like, when you look at the other names on the list, it's hard to make an argument for moving either of those guys up. I think Twitter and the 305,000 votes that this got did it right. I think that if you are arguing with this list and complaining about it, where Jalen Duren and Ausar are, I don't think you're looking at it subjectively. Those are my thoughts on the list. I think it's great. You might ask yourself, like, well, why is Cade? I will want to talk about this because this is what I was thinking about earlier. When I was looking at the 2025 Twitter results, my only complaint was where Cade landed last year, and it was 5th. And the reason I'm complaining about that is because Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams were ahead of him. And here's my thing. I know they were coming off a championship, but there is no way at that time any NBA franchise would be like, you know what, we're gonna take Chet over Cade, and we're gonna take Jalen Williams over Cade. That's where I felt like Cade was being disrespected last year when this poll came out. And the reason is because I don't think people were really looking at him as the player. I think they were just caught up in the whole moment. OKC won this. Maybe these guys really are. I would not take Jalen Williams over Cade Cunningham. I think Jalen Williams is a high-end number 2. I would love him in Detroit to be a running mate with Cade, but you would be crazy, in my opinion, to say, yeah, I feel comfortable enough taking Jalen Williams over Cade Cunningham. And the reason is like Chet or Jalen, they do not create like Cade does. He has more of a complete, this is the guy I'm going to get to lead my franchise game versus them. They are complementary pieces. Cade is a cornerstone. Cade is a guy that you build around. Chet and Jalen Williams, they are pieces that you add to a player that you were trying to build around. if that makes sense to you. But overall, I thought the lists were great. I love Josh Eberle's work. I mean, like, it's kind of cool. I kind of geeked out a little bit realizing that he does follow me on Twitter. I don't remember when that happened, but like, I've always been a fan of his work, and yeah, I'm just glad that I completely forgot that he followed me on there, and I'm just kind of bragging just a little bit. I doubt many people know who he is, but like, I am a fan of him, and it's cool when your heroes follow you in a way. You know what I mean? So this is a topic that was inspired by a post on the Detroit Pistons subreddit. And here's my starting five of players that I had high hopes for when they came to Detroit, whether it was through a trade, whether it was through free agency, or whether it was through the draft. But we'll do this. I'm doing a 1 through 5. I didn't add a 6-man, but I probably could at some point. But anyways, here's my 1 through 5. Feel free to tell me if this team is actually good. I think it's better than any team that the Pistons really put together between like 2008 until now. And I am including the 60-win team in there as well. So my first player, it would be Brandon Knight. And here's the reason with Brandon Knight. This dude was my favorite point guard prospect in like probably 5 years of watching the NBA draft. Like, I've been watching the NBA draft since I was 11 years old, and I'm 35 now, so for 24 years. But like, during that time, Brandon Knight, he was one of my absolute favorite college players to watch that year too. I loved Brandon Knight. I really thought he would be the next great guard to wear the red, white, and blue in Detroit. I was such a huge fan. And I remember my heart just being ripped out because I think he was traded like a year and a half into his time in Detroit. Like his second year into the league, he was just unloaded, and you're like, dang, dude. But he was part of that era of like guards that could score but weren't really efficient. Like, and he was traded for another guy with all-star game that just wasn't efficient in Brandon Jennings. But yeah, looking at it, he was just part of a weird era. He would not survive in today's NBA with how inefficient he is. He was just a chucker. But yeah, Brandon Knight, he was like the first guy. He was the first player that I was so excited about that they drafted that I thought was going to be great. At my 2 guard, I would have to go Ben Gordon. I don't think there's any other answer. He was amazing in Chicago. I absolutely loved his game. I loved watching him at UConn before that. He was a 20 points per game scorer, but in Detroit, they tried to make him a point guard. They tried to get him to play and pick and roll. They tried to get him to create offense for himself. It sucked. And it was such a disappointment. I wish Ben Gordon's time in Detroit went better. I think if Chauncey had still been there versus Ronnie Stuckey, we might be talking about him a little bit differently. But Ben Gordon, huge disappointment. Someone I had high hopes for. At number 3, this is a familiar name. Everybody knows this. It's Stanley Johnson. I know I said Brandon Knight was my favorite point guard prospect, but Stanley Johnson was the player that I was most excited about. I thought we were looking at like some version of Ron Artest or maybe some like poor version of Grant Hill. I thought he had the complete package. The one thing I noticed about him early on was the dude was afraid to dunk. You're 6'7", 6'8", 240, 250 pounds. You're built like a freight train, but like you're afraid to go through and over guys, even though you have all the athleticism in the world. Like, this dude would get small attacking the rim. Even on like fast breaks, he would opt to go for a layup versus a dunk. And I don't know. I had such high hopes for Stanley Johnson, but I was so disappointed after he got to Detroit and watching him play. Josh Smith, you probably knew this was coming. I know a lot of Pistons fans just absolutely hate Josh Smith. And dude, rightfully so. His time in Detroit sucked. Like, it sucked. And I thought he was going to be a standout player. I thought he was going to come to Detroit and he was going to pair with either Andre Drummond or Greg Monroe to form a pretty good front court. Unfortunately, we all know what happens. He takes a lot of 2s. They try to play him at the 3 when his best position was the 4. It was just a bad. I think he was just someone that was happy to get the contract and call it good. Like, I'm adding him to my team because like still there is still a part of me that actually does really love Josh Smith when he was in Atlanta, and I thought that's the player we were going to get. The guy that could do a little bit of everything, including throw down some highlight plays. Like, this guy was talked about on a lot of articles back then as like, when will this guy finally make an all-star team? He's the best player not to be named an all-star. He was on those lists near the top, and it just sucks that his career kind of was cut short after Detroit. Where really in the beginning and in the middle and in the end, it just sucked for Josh Smith. And you would think coming to Detroit, which was, I think at that time, still a decent environment, but yeah, that was a sinking ship. My fifth, and this would be my 5 on most teams, Mehmet Okur. And it doesn't even make me upset for how he played or how his time ended in Detroit. I just hated watching him play in a Larry Brown offense because Larry Brown clearly did not give a crap about this dude's game. He was a finesse player. He was face up. He shot way more threes under Rick Carlisle. And it just seemed, there's this play. I've rewatched the finals against the Lakers, and there is this one play with Okur where he is standing at the top of the key and he gets the ball and he has a wide open three. And I kid you not, if you watch him before he decides to ultimately pass the ball, if he looks to the bench and gives Larry Brown a look like, is it all right if I shoot this? That man was so afraid to play his game in Detroit after Larry Brown got there that as soon as he could bolt out the door, he was out that door. And it absolutely ruined me. And because my belief is that if the Pistons were able to retain Okur, he could play either the 4 or the 5. Your offense didn't change much, and your defense didn't change much with him playing either of those positions. And I felt like he would have been a good bridge player between the ending of the going to work squad into whatever was going to come after that. Like the Pistons, they suffered for years, and part of it is because of moves not retaining Okur. Now, I understand he has to sign the contract, but like, man, you couldn't convince him to say, you will have a larger role on this team. And if he had just waited one more year when they got Flip Saunders, who was like, in my opinion, the perfect coach for Mehmet Okur's offensive skill set, because he just was leaving Minnesota where he had KG, who was also a big that could shoot. I mean, he didn't shoot out to the three-point line. He shot a foot inside of it, but you get what I'm saying. He was a long-range shooter, and that offense was built around his abilities. Not saying Okur was on his same level, but Okur had some of the same offensive abilities that KD did, and could have made that Flip Saunders offense work really well. Unfortunately, he signs with Utah. He becomes a one-time All-Star. He really is a fantastic player outside of Detroit, and it's just hugely disappointing. And I had such high hopes for him because I thought him and Tayshaun Prince were actually going to be something together as well. I remember, I know Tayshaun Prince joked about this, where he was like, yeah, I think we could be the best duo in the NBA. And I remember him, I don't know if it was like an interview or something they were doing before the game, but it was fun to talk about. And it was really unique watching Okur at the time playing in Detroit, not knowing that was the future of what the NBA was going to be like. But I really had high hopes for Okur. I was just disappointed when he left because I truly feel like if he had been here at the end of the going to work squad to the years after, we wouldn't have been in such a dark time in Detroit. We would have had better basketball years earlier, but it just didn't happen. Thank you guys for listening to the 3 Championship Drive podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe, follow, rate, review, but more importantly, tell a Pistons fan.